Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 9, Episode 18, The Frogger. Hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing okay. I am in the waiting period to see if I'm going to get sick because, 3 out of 4 so far in my house has gotten some kind of icky cold. And so my husband was the latest to fall. Unfortunately, he was also traveling for work at the time when he got sick. But he made it home and is now just holed up in bed. And I'm doing my best taking care of him after I took care of my son last weekend, my daughter earlier this week. She took 2 days off of school for being sick. And I am just, taking the precautions I need to take, but at the same time, kind of preparing myself for the inevitable, which I really hope doesn't happen. I have 2 more shows at the museum, and then that is done. I'm going to miss it so much, but I certainly don't want to miss those shows because I'm sick. You guys just send me some good vibes, some good healthy vibes. All right, with that, let's get into the episode. The synopsis for The Frogger is as follows. George takes extreme measures to keep his high score on Frogger intact. Elaine rebels against the constant stream of office parties until she starts to miss out on all the cake. Kramer acquires caution tape from his friend from the police department. Jerry dates a sentence-finishing friend of Elaine's and worries that a New York serial killer called the Lopper is targeting people who look like him. This episode was written by Greg Cavett and Andy Robin. We start out in the Peterman offices. We're in the break room. Elaine is there with a group of coworkers singing happy birthday to her coworker Walter. And she's clearly annoyed. You can tell she is just not into this at all. She tries to duck out of there when they're done singing, but a colleague stops her with a piece of cake, and Elaine tries to refuse it, but the coworker's like, come on, it's Walter's special day. Elaine points out that there are 200 people in this office. Every day is someone's special day. She takes the slice and then tries to get out, but then another coworker blocks her way with an entirely different cake, and he tells her it's Walter's last day. She's like, wait a second, it's his birthday and it's his last day? No, this is other Walter from Returns. Well, other Walter, who we met last week, he's the one that gave Elaine the hard time about her dancing. He arrives and everyone yells, surprise! Other Walter asks Elaine to have a piece of cake. It's my last day. Okay, pile it on, she says. So both sides of the room start singing at each other for he's a jolly good fellow and happy birthday. They're all very amused by this, except for Elaine. She's stuffing her face with cake, looking miserable. The actress in this scene who plays the cake pusher is Melissa Denton, and she's also appeared in The Middle, Anger Management, Avenue 43, and many other shows. And I think she plays this perky office mate very well, the perfect vibe to annoy Elaine. Not as over the top as Toby, but a great disposition that will piss off Elaine any day of the week. Also, I saw in the IMDb page that the name of this character is Kobe, so maybe just like a kinder Toby or something. I was like, interesting choice, Kobe. My take on the scene, I always love when an Elaine scene starts off an episode. There's not a lot of exposition here to show what Elaine will be going through in this episode. We just see it. We see the vibe of how she hates these office parties. It's all in her physicality. She's rolling her eyes, sort of spite eating the cake when the 2 parties are going on at once. Really well done. I like this. Very few people can pull off being so annoyed as well as JLD. She's so good at this. And this, I have to say, is so relatable. Back in my corporate days, working in an office day in and day out, this was a thing. I mean, the forced socializing, as Elaine explains to Jerry in the next scene, it's part of office culture for sure. And as pathetic as it may sound, I didn't mind it half the time. It was a nice break in the day. Sometimes you just needed to get an over-frosted piece of grocery store cake and stand around a conference room and celebrate whatever. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I didn't mind those breaks at all. I will say the Costco cake, when someone went all out and got a Costco sheet cake, those were my favorites. But being that I was working in the corporate world when I lived in Michigan, people went crazy for a thing called bumpy cake. Now, I don't know if a lot of you out there are familiar, but I will explain. There was a woman in my department in particular who planned a lot of the cake parties that happened, and she was obsessed with this bumpy cake. We got to get bumpy cake. We're going to get bumpy cake. So for those of you not aware, maybe you're not Midwestern, but I think it might just be a Michigan thing. Anyway, bumpy cake was made by a Michigan-based company called Sanders Chocolates. And I remember there being so much hype before that first time I had bumpy cake because I sat right next to that woman who was so excited about it. And I gotta say, it was very, very disappointing. I'm not a fan of it at all. So I found this description online. It says, originally created in the early 1900s by the Sanders Chocolates Company in Detroit, where the ice cream float was also invented. I thought that was interesting. This cake sports a poured fudge frosting over bumps of vanilla buttercream, creating the name by which Midwesterners have known and loved it for many years, bumpy cake. It's just that super sweet vanilla buttercream frosting in strips that are the bumps. They're like speed bumps, basically. It should be called speed bump cake. And then a thick fudge frosting on top of it. It's just so much frosting. Look, that's just me. It's way too rich. There's nothing light about it at all. I'm not surprised this was popular in the Midwest. That's all I'm going to say. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry doesn't see the issue about having cake. It's the forced socializing, Elaine says. Just because we work in the same office, we have to act like we're friends? Jerry asks why she's not there right now. Oh, I had to take a sick day because I was so sick of these people. Elaine then changes the subject. She talked to her friend Lisi, and she's all set for her date with Jerry. Jerry isn't thrilled about dating one of Elaine's friends. I foresee messiness. Elaine looks at him. She's like, yeah, you're much better off sitting around here reading comic books and eating spaghetti at 2 a.m. Jerry then asks Elaine if she wants to come with them to Mario's Pizza. Oh, your old high school hangout. Why are you going there? Jerry says, because they're closing. George and I are going for one last slice. Kramer enters with a big roll of official police caution tape. He got it from his cop friend, Doug. And Jerry points out, you've got a lot of friends. How come I never see any of these people? Well, they want to know why they never see you. I think that's a great line. He ties some caution tape around a banana. I'm going to eat that later. Kramer tells them how the police are all distracted by a serial killer in Riverside Park, the Lopper. Elaine's like, what? What is that about? Well, apparently there was some serial killer cutting people's heads off in Riverside Park, and that it's not made public yet because the police are having some internal dissension about the name. The names they've come up with are Hedzo, the Denogonizer, Son of Dad. It was Kramer's suggestion. My take on this scene. So this is Elaine on a sick day. She's dressed in business clothes. She's dressed like she's going to the office. Come on. I know it's the 90s, but let Elaine wear some jeans on her day off. What the hell? I don't know. This bugs me for some reason. This is a micro tender moment, I'm going to say, friendship moment between Elaine and Jerry. She's setting him up with her friend, and I like that she's doing it for his sake, from keeping him from being a sad bachelor, like eating spaghetti at 2 a.m. It's so funny because of the specificity of it. The reading comic books things like, yeah, we know that about Jerry, but that example of eating spaghetti at 2 a.m., it just really adds to that line of dialogue. And it makes me think one of the writers, Greg Cavett or Andy Robin, they count this as their pathetic habit or something. Like, I can't believe I'm eating spaghetti at 2 a.m. What the hell? Now, I would have loved to know how Elaine knows Lisi. Not that it matters to the story here, but just a little more insight into her friendship could have maybe been a little bit of a fun moment. So I'm going to make it up. I'm just going to make it up here. Maybe Lisi, no, you know what? Not maybe. This is it. Lisi and Elaine were partnered up at like a team building event when they both worked at Pendant Publishing, and they bonded over how all the mediocre dudes kept getting promoted over them. That's it. That's how Elaine and Lisi know each other. Done. Next, we're at Mario's Pizza. Jerry and George enter so excited. Hey, Mario, remember us? No, the guy says. We used to come in every day. Where you been? We're tanking over here. George orders 2 slices and 2 grape sodas. The guy says, oh, thanks a lot. That'll save us. Make it the large sodas. George notices the Frogger machine, and he says he used to play that all the time. He reminisces about the great times playing Frogger, eating pizza. Then he starts commanding the kid who's playing the game what moves to make, and it causes this kid to lose. He turns to George, thanks a lot. Beat it, punk. Jerry notices the high scores. GLC, is that you? Oh my God. George can't believe it. 860,000. He can't believe it. No one's beaten him in like 10 years. Oh, their pizza's ready. Here are your pizzas, pea brains. And Jerry says, I think I remember why we stopped coming here. Okay, this has always bugged me. And what an easy thing to correct. I believe these men are supposed to be in their mid to late 30s. What the hell is George talking about that it's 10 years ago? That he got this high score. He certainly wasn't in high school 10 years ago. It was pointed out in the IMDb Goofs page for this episode how in the Andrea Doria episode, I think they reveal that George is 34, and that was in 96. This is 2 years later. So he's 36 at this point. So yeah, he's 26. I don't know. The whole 10 years line really bugs me. And just feels like something they could have fixed really easily, or someone should have caught it. All right, next we're in Elaine's office. Elaine is smelling a pen, and the voiceover says, this pen smells really bad. Why do I keep smelling it? She drops the pen. Is it too late for me to go to law school? A bunch of coworkers walk in. What's this? Well, they heard she was out sick yesterday, so we brought you some cake. It's carrot. It's good for you. And then they all start singing a Get Well song, and Elaine yells at them to stop. It's not even a real song. She says, now we're celebrating a sick day? One of them says, I think it's nice. What? What's nice? She says, you're just trying to fill the void in your life with flour and sugar and egg and vanilla? I mean, we're all unhappy. Do we have to be fat too? Oh, then she looks over at her coworker, Becky. Not you, Becky. I know you have a slow metabolism. And she tells them, I don't want one more piece of cake in my office. Then Walter comes in singing the Get Well song, but the guy tells him it's not happening. They all walk out so defeated, and Becky asks, can we still eat it? The actress in this scene who plays Becky is Seinfeld writer Jennifer Crittenden. She's also written for Everybody Loves Raymond, New Adventures of Old Christine, and Veep, among others. Wow, she's really had the treat of writing for JLD for so long. Also, she's quite padded as Becky, which I'm sort of glad about. Not that this show at all shies away from fat shaming. I mean, obviously, Newman, that's pretty much the whole joke about Newman. But I guess they drew the line at fat shaming a woman. I don't know. Do they deserve any credit for that? Probably not. But I do like her performance. That sad face is so great when Elaine's like, not you, Becky. And apparently she also ad-libbed the line at the end. Can we still eat it? My take on this scene, why does the pen smell so bad? I like this moment of utter nonsense and banality that everyone, I don't care who you are, people go through this every day. And then at the end, her contemplating law school, we just learn a little more about Elaine here. Did she want to be a lawyer? Or is she just thinking of anything to take her out of her current situation? All right, back to the pen. This is what happened to the pen, guys. I'm just a backstory machine here in this episode. So the pen was on the break room counter, and when I'll blame Peggy here. Peggy was pouring cream into her coffee one day, and she spilled some onto the pen. But since she's a germaphobe, she wasn't about to touch that pen to clean it up. And then Peterman finds it after all the cream has sort of dried off, and he picks it up and inadvertently forgets it in Elaine's office, where he visits her to tell his latest idea for the catalog. And there it is. The spoiled creamer smell. That is what Elaine is smelling when she's smelling that pen. Now, I know some of you out there were expecting something gross, like I'd come up with something involving this pen and someone's butt. I mean, God, shame on you guys. All right, back to the scene. We get a classic annoyed Elaine here, and that reaction everyone has to her freaking out is very entertaining, especially if you watch Melissa Denton, or excuse me, Kobe, her eyes bugging out. It always makes me laugh. When they pan back to the group, she's like, ah! Also, Walter coming in late, singing, all cheerful, ready to celebrate. It's really well done. This scene is also a very good example of heightening. It's a concept in all kinds of comedy writing, sketch writing, script writing, even in improv. Something has been established and now it's being heightened to something even more ridiculous. I mean, celebrating a sick day. Comedy writing 101, people. Heightening is one thing that has to be done in order for it to work. And that Get Well Soon song, it's an earworm. I'm telling you, get well soon. We wish you to get well. Oh, I would love to know the songwriting process for that. All right, next we're in Monks. Jerry is on his date with Lisi, and she's finishing all of his sentences with incorrect conclusions to his thoughts, and it's clearly annoying him. As she's leaving, she finishes his sentence into another date at 8 tomorrow, and she exits. George enters, and he and Jerry sit in the booth next to where he and Lisi sat. George tells him it's all happening. He's going to buy the Frogger machine, and GLC must live on. Then Jerry asks, well, how are you going to keep the power going since once the game is unplugged, all the scores will be erased? Oh, this bums George out so hard. Why must there always be a problem? The actress in this scene is Julia Campbell. She plays Lisi, and she has quite a lengthy resume. Oh my goodness. She's been in just about everything, including Romy and Michelle's high school reunion, Friends, Dexter, and many others. And I love her in this episode. She does such a great job with all of the comedy. And let's face it, she really hit the jackpot with a love interest role with some substance, which is quite the rarity on Seinfeld. And she is just wonderful. No notes. Bravo, Julia Campbell. Absolutely love her performance. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer tells Jerry the latest Lopper victim looked like him. Jerry's not worried. There's a lot of people walking around who look like me. Kramer says, not as many as there used to be. George is calling electricians in the Yellow Pages to help rig the Frogger machine with power so he can keep his high score while he moves it. And he just gets hung up on. But Kramer tells him he won't find a legitimate electrician who will do that and that he knows a guy. Oh, another friend, Jerry says. No, he's no friend. We don't get along at all. But is he good? Oh, he's the best. And the worst. George pleads with Kramer. I'm never going to have a child. If I lose this Frogger high score, that's it for me. Kramer says, believe me, you can count on Slippery Pete. That's his name? Yeah, I don't care for it either. That's one of the things we argue about. And George is even more motivated now. He's going to find a guy with a truck. GLC must live on. And he exits. Jerry gets a call from Elaine while she's smelling more things from her desk. She wants to know how the date went with Lisi, and he tells her, oh, she's a sentence finisher. It's like dating Mad Libs. Such a great line. Jerry can hear people singing happy birthday in the background, and Elaine tells him it's the third cake party that day, and that she didn't realize how hooked she was on the 4:00 sugar rush. So join in, Jerry says. No, I can't. Not after I denounce them. Oh, maybe I'll raid Peterman's fridge. He's always got a truffle in there or something. Oh, Jerry is totally disinterested and hangs up on Elaine. Then he sees some police tape around a broken egg on his floor. Kramer tells him to be careful. My take on this scene, we're moving Elaine's story along here. She's regretting her outburst against cakes because of the sugar craving. Such a great touch that she's smelling other items on her desk. I wonder if the tape dispenser smells good or bad. Well, okay, here we go again. I'm going to say it smells really good. Okay, so this is why. Where it is on her desk, it's also the area where Elaine sprays her deodorant during her midday refresh. You know, she wears a lot of blouses. The material on those blouses don't breathe. So she needs to reapply her deodorant. And I'm going to say she uses a deodorant spray by the brand Fa. F-A. It's a real brand. Look it up. So that tape dispenser smells like Fa deodorant, fresh jasmine smell. All right, back to the scene. I do wish we got a little bit of a reaction from Elaine about Lisey's sentence finishing, but we just move on to the cake plot. So we get no reaction from her. I mean, I don't know, maybe she never noticed it, or maybe she defends Lisey like this is a regular conversation, Jerry, and Jerry's being too critical. Just something. I would have liked something. And the best part to me is Jerry hanging up on Elaine. It's very funny. I just love he's done. I don't want to talk about Peterman's fridge. Speaking of, that's where we are next, in Peterman's office. Elaine knocks. Hello, Peter boy. Well, his office is empty. She goes to his fridge and finds some cake. She takes a little chunk and eats it. And then we hear Peterman coming down the hall singing the get well soon song. He greets Elaine, says, "We missed you at the get well party. Poor old Walt has a polyp on the duodenum. It's benign, but still a bastard." Is this the same freaking Walt? Is this Walt now? Or is it Walter? Did Walter, who just had a birthday, also have a polyp? I'm so confused. He asks Elaine if she can keep a secret. "No, sir, I can't," she says, and tries to leave. But then he tells her in that college boy fridge of his, he has a slice of cake from the wedding of King Edward VIII to Wallace Simpson circa 1937. Price, $29,000. Elaine can't believe it. My take on this scene, it's a fun little scene. We see Elaine succeeds in her quest to get a sweet treat from Peterman's fridge. And I love that Peterman comes in singing that Get Well song. And John O'Hurley's delivery of polyp in the duodenum. It's just magical. I absolutely love it. And oh shit, Elaine has fucked up eating a chunk of that expensive antique cake. Next, we're on the street. Jerry and Lisey are walking. She's finishing his sentences again, totally incorrectly. He's ready to walk her home and call it a night, but once he finds out she lives right off Riverside Park, he redirects her to his place. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Well, turns out Jerry slept with Lisey. Says to George he brought her back to his place to avoid the lopper. And you automatically sleep with her? Well, I just wanted to fool around a little bit, but then she finished your thought. Such a great back and forth. Elaine enters. She says, "Guess what I ate?" George comes in hot with an ostrich burger. No, a $29,000 piece of cake. She tells them how Peterman got it at an auction and how it was the most romantic thing she's ever eaten. How'd it taste? Jerry wants to know. A little stale, yeah. George assumes this means she's sleeping with Peterman. She's like, "No," and elbows him back. He doesn't know I ate it. In fact, I have to go sneak in later and even it out. George brings it back to the ostrich burger. You know, they say it has less fat, but you eat more of it. Elaine and Jerry just ignore that, and Elaine tells Jerry how Lisey told her that she's planning a big trip for them to Pennsylvania Dutch country. Oh no, Jerry says that's the serious relationship place. Elaine is so confused. What is going on with you two? Well, I think by sleeping with her, I may have given her the wrong idea. Elaine pulls a cookie out of a bag and tells George it's for her 4 p.m. sugar fix. Jerry's got his phone in his hand. He says, "I'm calling this off right now." No, Elaine calls him out. "You're way past the phone call breakup stage." "Well, I'm not going to go over there. That's where the lopper is." Elaine's like, "Come on, it's daylight. It won't take that long. Just make a clean break." And she eats the head off of a gingerbread man cookie. My take, not surprising that Elaine feels so moved about this cake. She's already expressed in a previous episode how romantic she thought it was that King Edward abdicated the throne to marry Wallace Simpson. This was the episode where George was thinking about converting to Latvian Orthodox for his girlfriend. And now she got to eat some of that cake from that wedding she thought was so romantic, which was a little stale. That change in emotion is delivered so well. She's so excited, then a little stale, yeah. But sorry, a little stale. No, that cake would taste like ass after 60 years. Come on. It'd have to be completely inedible. In fact, somewhere in the notes about nothing, they said all antique cakes and desserts, like I guess that is a real thing. They are preserved and sold at auctions and whatnot. But yeah, they're not edible. Gross. Elaine moves Jerry's story along with Lisey, knowing about her plans about the Pennsylvania Dutch country trip. And that little bit at the end, bite at the end with the gingerbread man. Very cute. All right, next we're in Peterman's office. Elaine is evening out the cake and, eats the sliver that she's taken off. No point in wasting $1,200. She starts pretending that she's at the wedding with all these dignitaries dancing around. "Oh, Amanda, isn't the wedding marvelous? Cake? No, I shouldn't. I mustn't. What the hell, she says. She goes in for some more. My take, Elaine is just a bad decision machine here, tries to correct what she did, and then just keeps going. We learn later that she eats that entire piece of cake. I mean, I guess she's just overcome with the romance of it, I suppose. I don't know. I cannot relate to being at all enamored with the crown or anything relating to the crown. Sorry, probably because my ancestors were colonized by them. But hey, you do you, Elaine. I do like the delivery of, what the hell? Elaine is totally in her fuck it era, and I can't say I can penalize her for that. Next, we're at Monk's. George is meeting with the gang who will help him with the Frogger. Slippery Pete is the electrician, and Shlomo is the truck driver, and Kramer's there because he's going to block off a loading zone with his tape. Now, these guys aren't the sharpest tools in the shed, and Kramer and Pete are bickering about old grievances, one of which is Kramer making out with Pete's mail-order bride. They're all confused. First, they think they're committing a crime, but George explains they aren't, and then the map is not clear. Finally, we cut to them sitting at Mario's Pizza, and then they finally all understand. Right, next we're at Monk's again, but later, Elaine is at the counter. She needs to replace the antique cake that she just downed in Peterman's office. She's talking to the waitress. You got anything lying around? Something pre-war would be just great. Kramer enters. Oh, you got the munchies? He's looking at all the cake that Elaine has ordered. She says no. She tells Kramer she's in big trouble. She needs to find a replica of this cake that she ate. And then she shows him a picture in the catalog. Oh, Sotheby's. Yeah, they make good cake. He tells her, he's seen cake like that. Entenmann's. At the supermarket? No, they're not really at the supermarket. They have their own case at the end of the aisle. My take on this scene, it's not much, just Kramer telling her about the Entenmann's cake. I'm wondering, this had to have been product placement since they're using the real brand name. And I totally remember it was always mentioned in their commercials about having their own display case at the end of the aisle. I was trying to find online some of these old commercials where they say that, but I couldn't find any. But anyway, I remember it being explicitly mentioned, like, don't look for it with all the other baked goods. They have their own case at the end of the aisle. My favorite part of this scene, though, is Kramer pretending to know what Sotheby's is. Yeah, they make good cake. Next, we're at Lisey's apartment. Jerry arrives with a baseball bat. She's calling him honey and sweetheart, clearly totally in this relationship. Jerry tells her that they need to talk. We get this montage of them breaking up, both of them getting offended and then attacking the other. It's just going on and on. And then at one point, they take a break to eat some baked beans. These beans are pretty good. 20 minutes. Then we cut to Lisey saying, okay, I guess it's over. Finally, Jerry says. She wants him out of her apartment, but they've been breaking up for hours and now it's nighttime. He walks out all scared, and then he sees some scary guy approaching carrying a head-shaped object in his hand, but it's not clear what it is. Jerry freaks out, presses the intercom, tells Lisey he made a big mistake and begs to come back in, and she buzzes him in right in the nick of time. But it ends up the creepy guy is just Slippery Pete carrying a battery that he stole for the Frogger job. Next, we're on the street. George sees Jerry, who is waiting for Lisey outside of a boutique store. George is excited for the big Frogger move, says it's been timed out to perfection. All right, sounds great, Jerry says. George invites him over. We should play later. No, I can't. I'm going on a long weekend. Lisey comes out with some Amish hats for both of them. Great, Jerry says. Why don't you put it in the car so I don't accidentally throw it in that dumpster? She says, okay, and tells him she'll meet thee in front of his place in 15 minutes. A long, long weekend. George says, I hear thee. Next, we're in Peterman's office. Elaine has replaced the cake with the Entenmann's, and Peterman enters with an appraiser to tell him how much the cake is worth. Elaine tries to leave all nervous, but Peterman insists she stay. Well, the guy takes one look, and he says he thinks it's worth about $219. Peterman misunderstands this to mean $219,000, but no, $2.19. It's an Entenmann's. Do they have a castle at Windsor? Peterman asks. No, they have a case at the end of the aisle. Peterman is sick with shock. Oh, are you all right, Peterman? You look ill. Then Elaine starts singing, get well soon. We wish you to get well. Ba 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 ba. Bom ba dum bom 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 bom. We have a Gilmore Girls Seinfeld connection. Oliver Muirhead, who plays the appraiser, he appeared in season 6, episode 16 of Gilmore Girls, Bridesmaids Revisited. He was the moderator for a Young Voices in Journalism panel that Rory took part in as the editor of the Yale Daily News. And fun fact about the scene that Oliver Muirhead is in, a young Leslie Odom Jr. plays another college editor. This is about 9 years before his portrayal of Aaron Burr in the original cast of Hamilton. And I always like Oliver Muirhead, such a fun, classy Englishman who's very funny. My take on this scene is very funny. The best part to me is Elaine singing the Get Well song to Peterman. Also, Elaine, your bad decisions continue. You're going to throw away the Entenmann's box in the trash, which is a foot away from the fridge. Come on, you're smarter than that, Elaine. Very disappointed. Next, we're on the street. George finds the guys playing the Frogger game. He's so pissed. You're going to drain the battery, which does only have 3 minutes of power left. Well, they can't take it back into the pizza parlor because it's closed, and Kramer can't block the traffic since he's out of police tape. Then George realizes this all looks very familiar. We see him get the Frogger across the street in an overhead view with the Frogger music playing. He's dodging the cars like in the game and almost makes it. Except he can't get the machine over the curb, and a truck with apparently a blind driver, or maybe the brakes don't work, hits the Frogger game and just keeps driving, smashing it to pieces. And Jerry says, game over. All right, we have a tag to the episode. Peterman calls Elaine into his office and says he's been so sick over the cake scam news, but then he remembered the surveillance camera he had installed to catch other Walter using his latrine. He turns the screen to Elaine and we see footage of her dancing around, eating all the antique cake. She tries to explain, but then he cuts her off, asking if the item is still pat, pat, pat on his tummy with her. As far as I know. Do you know what happens to a butter-based frosting after 6 decades in a poorly ventilated English basement? He tells her that what she's about to go through is punishment enough. Dismissed. My take, I do like the sped-up footage of Elaine on the security camera. Now, this is how she should have danced at the Peterman party. There were no little kicks with that cake in hand. And yes, Elaine is going to have some major diarrhea in the future, probably vomiting. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already. I like this ending. It's a nice little pie in the face moment or cake in the face moment for Elaine. And she deserves it. She definitely does. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. Did you know that 100% of people who look at social media or the news feel 1000% more like shit after doing so? I know I do. I feel helpless, anxious, and truly sad about 95% of things happening in this country. And no, just move to another country is not a helpful solution, idiot. That's why I encourage all of you to take breaks and figure out how to function without social media and the 24-hour news cycle. Now that will look different for each of you. Maybe you take nice walks and connect with nature. Maybe you engross yourself in a book that has nothing to do with politics. Or maybe you binge RuPaul's Drag Race and strut along with Mama Ru whenever she makes her entrance. I mean, I don't know, I've heard some people do that. Whatever your method is for unplugging and finding some joy, this is me giving you permission to do it. Now, that may sound silly, but based on how I have felt these past few weeks, it is very easy to fall into the trap of feeling like you're never doing enough and that if you're not taking action all the time, you're failing yourself, your kids, the country, and the world. So take a lot of breaks and reset your mind. An exhausted and overstimulated mind never results in quality decisions. And when you do feel rested and you feel ready to fight again, here's something you can do that won't take very long. You can call 202-224-3121. This is the U.S. Capitol switchboard where an operator will connect you directly with the office you request, so you can let your members of Congress know how you feel. Or you can go to your Congress member's website and find their email address. Make your voice heard. That number again is 202-224-3121. Remember, you are allowed to take breaks. You are allowed to recognize the joys in your life and revel in them for as long as you need. don't let all the rage and anger take over your ability to function. You can be pissed off and productive as long as you periodically pause. But don't give up. That's what they want. And we're back. There weren't really any extras I wanted to mention, so why don't we just go ahead and open Greg's sack lunch. He's our most dedicated contributor, and every week he sends us a sack full of his thoughts. So Greg's overall thoughts for The Frogger, he says, "This is one of the few episodes I vividly remember seeing when it originally aired. Specifically George's Frogger stuff, which is my favorite part of the episode. But also Elaine and her coworker parties and decades-old wedding cake. Jerry and Kramer's stuff is just so-so, which is usually the case." I agree with you mostly. I am going to say that I do enjoy Julia Campbell, who plays Lisi, so much. I love the sentence finishing. So I actually think Jerry with that plot is very, very clever. Next in Greg's sack are his favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says, "I had to take a sick day. I'm so sick of these people," is one of the best lines in the whole series. For anyone who has worked in an office, your coworkers really do make or break the job. 100%. I mean, I think I worked at every company where I worked because of my coworkers mostly. I was definitely not fulfilled by the work, but I was lucky to work with some really great people. And yeah, no, if you work with shitty people, forget about it. That's why I quit my last job before I decided to leave the corporate world, because it was just a whole lot of garbage people. Next, Greg says, "Not an Elaine moment, but George crossing the street to the Frogger music is one of my favorite moments in television history." Whoa, bold statement. It was clear they were setting up the whole story for this bit, and I totally didn't see it coming the first time. I remember sitting on my bed watching this in college and laughing pretty much the hardest I've ever laughed at a TV show. I still love it so much. The side movements, the back and forth, it's so perfect. I hate how the truck just plows it over, like he wouldn't stop, although I guess that's the game. I'm sad for George. It's the one time I was happy for him and he wasn't being an ass about something. He may not have a child. This was his legacy. Yeah, you're right. You know, I never really thought about how sad it was for George, but it is. And yes, I'm with you. I mentioned this before. Like, what the heck happened with that truck? But you're right. That is what the game is. The trucks don't stop and it just plows over whatever, the frog. And so, yes, I agree. I agree that this is very sad for George. He's not being an ass. He's like really wants this bright spot in his life to live on. And of course it's not going to work out. It's Seinfeld. Greg goes on to say, "I also love when Elaine says, 'This pen smells really bad. So why do I keep smelling it?' This is so relatable to me. Are we all the same? Do we all do the same things like this? I got gasoline on my hand yesterday and I didn't have the chance to wash my hands immediately, so I kept smelling my hand and it's like, what's wrong with me? This isn't a good smell." Ooh, I disagree. Gasoline, I think either you love it or hate it. I love it. Remember that scene in Tommy Boy after he puts the gas pump back in the thing and then he immediately smells his fingers? That's relatable to me. I disagree. I think it smells so good. But yes, you're right. It's totally relatable. I mentioned it before, but like these banal moments that we all go through, and we all do these things where we're like, yeah, why are we smelling something that's bad? It's some weird, I think, primal thing that every human being does. Next, Greg says, "Elaine on the security tape eating the cake is a hilarious way to show that she's been caught. And I love how she sings the Get Well Soon song to him when he finds out the cake is Entenmann's. I'm not a big Peterman fan, but I love how he says the punishment that will happen in her stomach is punishment enough. It's excellent. Her face reaction of total fear is such a payoff to it all." Yeah, and I hate to say it, but Elaine deserves it. What were you thinking, Elaine? Like, he's not going to, I mean, especially after you know what it is. He bought this cake for $29,000 and you're just going to eat it all? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Next in Greg's sack is his scene swap idea. He says, the Jerry plot annoys me because I feel like it was a great idea that was executed very poorly. Being scared of being in your girlfriend's neighborhood where a killer is on the loose is a good setup, but the casting of the girlfriend and how Jerry acts all throws me off here. I wouldn't scrap it, but I'd totally redo it. Her calling him honey and sweetheart after like 2 dates, even though he's stayed over, and then this big long breakup. I just don't like it at all. And if she's Elaine's friend, there should have been some more crossover here. So not a scene swap, just a real do-over for this. The only payoff is when she buys the Pennsylvania Dutch hats, and Jerry says she better hold on to it so he doesn't accidentally throw it in that dumpster. And then George later saying, I hear thee. These are my only 2 laughs from the whole entire Jerry story. Interesting. So I see what you're saying here. I think you have a problem with like the pacing of the relationship. So I think she's just a little clingy. She calls him honey and sweetheart after they've slept together. She's really just moving this forward really fast, obviously with the Pennsylvania Dutch country thing. I am so amused by that montage of them breaking up because I think the ridiculousness of that comes from like, they barely know each other. Why is this taking so long? And why are all these things from the past coming up? Like, oh my, I love that part where he's like, well, I'm sorry. I'm not Brad. I'm Jerry. Nice to meet you. Clearly something about an old boyfriend Brad came up that she keeps bringing up or something. Like, I don't know. I thought it was actually really well done. And I always find it very entertaining because I also love Julia Campbell's performance. I think she's really funny. Next in Greg's sack are his other thoughts. He says, the local pizza place is such a thing here in New York City. Because these places never go out of business, people have their favorites from childhood, and it's weirdly a part of your heritage. I grew up in suburban Michigan, and yeah, we had restaurants and stuff we went to, but nothing like the loyalty to your pizza place, especially when there's one on every block. I never realized the significance of this watching it originally. Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't realize that either. Of course, why would I? I don't live in New York City, but that's really cool that this is so true to what your experience has been, Greg. They did... A couple of people pointed out this is all in like the goof section of the IMDb page. Jerry and George grew up in Long Island and this place is in the city. So there's no way they could have gone here every single day, but whatever, we're supposed to let that shit go. Ironically, there was a pizza place, like a local pizza place in Royal Oak, where if you talk to any kid in Royal Oak, not any maybe, but a lot of kids in Royal Oak, Tanya's Pizza, that was the place. And it was walking distance from our high school. So many times we would just walk to Tanya's right after school, buy the slice. I want to say it was like 75 cents. Yeah, I'm fucking old. But I just remember that. Like it was sort of a little bit out of my way to walk home, but it was worth it. And it was great because the owners knew a lot of the high schoolers would come. And so they'd have like fresh slices of pepperoni pizza, cheese pizza, sausage and onion. Oh my gosh, it was so good. But Tanya's Pizza, I believe it's still there. We did a drive-by of my old house last summer when I visited Michigan. And my brother and I went to our old high school as well, just kind of walked around the outside. But yeah, I believe we drove right past Tanya's and it was still there. So any of my Royal Oak people, you'll know Tanya's Pizza, that was like our Mario's for sure. Greg goes on to say, one thing that always bothered me is Jerry saying that the scores in the Frogger would get wiped out when the machine's unplugged. Do you mean to tell me that in 20 years, that machine was never unplugged? What about the famous blackout in the summer of 1977? I call shenanigans, but it makes for a good plot, so I guess I'll excuse this leap of faith. Oh my gosh, Greg, did you write into the IMDb page? Because many people brought this up, especially the famous blackout in 1977. And also cleaning behind it and also rearranging maybe the tables in the restaurant. There's just no way. But of course, you're supposed to let that shit go for the plot. But like I said earlier, my bigger thing is George saying that no one's beaten him in 10 years. Like, 10 years ago, you were not in high school. Next, Greg says, the actress who plays Jerry's date in this, I remember from Romy and Michelle's high school reunion. Something about her has always bothered me. She's like a QVC host to me. There's a phoniness to both her look and line delivery that I don't know if it's intentional or just how she comes off. Interesting. I am embarrassed to say this, but I've never seen Romy and Michelle's high school reunion. It's embarrassing because it feels like I should have seen it. I just think I think I'd heard it was pretty bad by like a few of my friends back in the day when it first came out. They said it was like unwatchable. So I was like, all right, I guess I won't watch it. But I know it's like a cult classic. I don't even know if it's a cult classic, but it's definitely a very, very well-liked movie and famous movie for people about our age, Greg. So I probably have to watch it at some point. But I do like her. I like her a lot. I've always enjoyed this actress. I've seen her in many things. So I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. But I respect it. I can see what you're saying. But for me, I think she's very entertaining. Greg goes on to say, casting Peter Stormare as Slippery Pete right after he did Fargo was brilliant. Everyone knows him from that, so when Jerry mistakes him for the Lopper, it makes for a good 90s moment. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. I knew he was from Fargo. Now, Fargo I have seen, and that movie is beyond brilliant. Holy shit. But, oh yeah, I mean, the wood chipper, oh my gosh, that is such a good, that's a really good observation, Greg. Completely agree. And I remember seeing Peter Stormare in this episode and thinking, isn't he too famous to be on a TV show? Like this was still at that time where it was like you were either a film actor or a TV actor. Rarely was there a crossover. So I was caught off guard because I'm like, yeah, no, that's the same guy. He's like in this Oscar-winning movie. But yeah, to your point, great 90s moment. And finally, Greg says, I also kind of want to mention the fat joke built in here where Elaine says she understands that Becky has a slow metabolism, and then Becky asking if they were still going to eat the cake. As a kid, I thought this was funny, but it really is just a cheap laugh. Comedy is comedy, and this show is better than this. And also, did you ever notice how Becky was the go-to name for a heavyset female character? Huh. I don't know if I ever noticed that. Yeah, back to what you were saying originally. This show definitely didn't shy away or, I mean, I don't think any 90s shows shied away from fat shaming. I mean, obviously Fat Monica was a huge hit on Friends, and I don't know, it's the time and what they do. But yeah, I agree. This particular moment where Becky, well, not you, Becky. I know you have a slow metabolism, like it's a medical condition. And then, yeah, can we still eat it? But like I said, Jennifer Crittenden, who plays Becky, she's the writer on the show. She sort of ad-libbed that. So, there's so many cringe moments in so many of the shows of this era and prior and after. So I get what you're saying for sure. I'm going to try and go back now. All the Beckys that were heavy set. You got me thinking now, Greg. Thank you so much, Greg, for your thoughts. We always love them. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. Okay, let's move on to my favorite Elaine moments. I absolutely love when she says, we're all unhappy. Do we have to be fat too? Just the anger in her voice, always entertaining. And a close second is her singing the Get Well song to Peterman. The look on her face, how she's feels so guilty because it's her fault. And then she knows he likes the song. All really great emotion behind it. And my final notes for the episode. This is a fun episode, a plot for Elaine that has nothing to do with a boyfriend. We had a run of those a few episodes ago. So I like that it's an office issue that she's dealing with. And again, so relatable when you work in an office. There are tons of these little events organized by the peppy, joyful folks in the office. And Elaine would absolutely be annoyed by this. I mean, this is all true to character, very much tracks with where Elaine is in her life. As I said before, I would have liked a little involvement in Jerry's plot for Elaine. Again, she and Lisey are friends. I mean, maybe there's a scene of Lisey finishing her sentences and Elaine hating it, and then trying to finish Lisey's sentences, and then they get in sort of a sentence finishing off or something. Okay, I'm not loving that idea, but as I'm thinking about it, okay, here we go. This is what it should have been. So Lisey bakes cakes professionally. She left the publishing world behind because of all the misogyny. So Elaine enlists her to replace the cake, except because she keeps finishing Elaine's thoughts, finishing Elaine's sentences, the cake looks nothing like the original. All right, done. That's how it would have been involved and how Elaine gets caught. Love that. And of course, I can't end this episode without mentioning the absolute brilliance of the real life Frogger scene with George. I remember seeing this episode when it first aired and just being kind of amazed, for lack of a better term, at the creativity of this scene. I think I even like out loud was like, oh my God, like it was so cool. And it's really well done. In the inside look for this episode, that was basically it. They were talking about how they had to rig the cameras and the lane lines were actually white, but because they were yellow in the game, at the very last minute, the set decorator had to find tape because they weren't going to repaint it, but he just found this yellow tape. So that's why, true to the game, it's yellow lane lines. So I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, what a creative scene. And I remember it being my favorite part of the episode when it first aired. And I think that's all I can say about the Frogger. Please be sure to follow Hot and Heavy on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, it's at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening. There's not very many episodes left, you guys. Please share this podcast with friends, anyone you think would enjoy this, any Seinfeld fans, Julia Louis-Dreyfus fans. I would so appreciate that. Rate and review the podcast. I'm giving you guys a lot to do, but you know what? It's a good distraction, right? From the dumpster fire that's happening right now. Okay. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.